Greetings to you all fellow travelers. This is Grotnip, welcoming you all back to the logbook of a simple lindworm traveler. Today we are going to be taking a closer look at my very favorite model in the entire game of Warcrow, and that is the Varank Hersir. I have already previously done and actually re-uploaded a video on the Hersir, but since I originally did and shot the video, there have been several updates to the Warcrow rules, and in the latest batch of updates, the Hersir's profile was updated a little bit, so I decided that this was the perfect time to revisit this favorite model of mine by salvaging what I could from the original presentation, upgrading it, however moderately in its graphic design, and also updating the contents to more reflect the changed landscape of Warcrow and also some of the things that I have learned since making the original video. So if you would care to join me, let's take a look at Varank Hersir in this video 2.0 about them. There's a saying in Finland that a child that is beloved has several names, referring to calling names or nicknames that people can have. And I think my love for the Hersir shines through in the fact that the profile that I love has several models that I have made for them, since as the non-named version of Njord the Merciless, there is no official model for the Hersir as of right now. What you see on the screen right now is my first self-converted Hersir model that I call Lagartha. She is made from the Evoker model in the Winds from the North box, converted and painted to be a Varank character, but later on I have built two other Hersir models that I tend to use more these days. But that's enough about the model, let's talk about the backstory. Who is the Hersir? Hersir are Varank captains that have been granted their title and an area of land to govern by their Jarl, that is the Varank chieftain of a larger unit or grouping of Varanks. As is tradition among the northern tribes, the Hersir are powerful warriors who seek to demonstrate their superiority over their underlings by being at the vanguard of military operations. But interestingly enough, where orcs look to cultivate potential challengers for the rule of the Wrathmane, the Varanks are more cynical in this regard, and Hersirs keep a close eye on their underlings, looking to take note of and suppress those Varanks who might one day grow strong enough to challenge them. So yes, the orcs and the Varanks do share many things in common, but at the same time they are two very different, very distinct cultures that don't always see eye to eye in every regard. When the call to war comes, Hersir is the one who will lead the Varanks from the lands that they govern, and they are also responsible for organizing raiding parties to enemy territory when no large-scale warfare is taking place. Now equipped with a keen understanding on who the Hersir is supposed to be, let's take a look at their gameplay profile. As you can see from the different look on the card or the top half of the card that you see before you. This is actually the first time I'm using the Corvosphere PDF to provide the card for the presentation. As of the release of the latest update, Corvosphere cards have been made the official standard for games of Warcrow, so for the most up-to-date profile, check the Corvosphere online. I quite like how the card looks. I think it's crisp, and at least for me it's pretty easy enough to read. I don't know if all the people, other people share my opinion on this. Then again, as we are about to see when we take a look at the bottom half of the card, there may be some little kinks still to be worked out. The Hersir comes in at 25 points, which is a mediocre cost for a Northern Tribes character. They cost the same as a full unit of Varank Ice Archers, or Lotta, or Evoker, or the Orc Contender, for example. So not exactly cheap, but not expensive either. The Hersir also provides a solitary command token for the Northern Tribes forces to use. The Hersir is one of those models that set up the early tradition for the Northern Tribes characters to have somewhat lackluster command token scores, which ends up meaning that in many cases the opponent is going to have the advantage when rolling for the initiative before the game begins, and the Northern Tribes player may have to ration their command tokens so that they can trigger all the powerful command skills that they wish to utilize at key points during the game. As we are about to see, Hersir does have access to a useful command skill that he might be tapping into at times, but I think that this model occupies the Goldilocks zone where they can use their own command token and you can feel that you are getting value out of the model, yes, but they can also be one of those models that actually lends their command token to be used by other more command token hungry models in the list, and they can do well without actually suffering any big impairment on their performance and the value that you gain from the Hersir. So I have actually sometimes been including a solitary Hersir as my last model if I've had 25 points spare in my list, and I have been looking at a situation where I'm, for example, running Alborg and a Prime Warrior, and I'm worried that 4 command tokens will not get me through the game, accessing all the potential extra activations that I might be able to utilize, so the Hersir can lend their command token for the other characters to use. At 4-2 movement and a 10 stride charge, the Hersir is decent enough when maneuvering for position on the battlefield, and the charge range of 10 should enable them to get the charge off against many infantry units that they are facing, elves and other fleet of foot units notwithstanding. To the best of my knowledge, Hersir is actually the only Varank model with a 4-2 movement, with the other Varanks usually sporting a 4-3, or in the case of the Polar Bear Totem skin changes, a 3-3. So maybe our Hersir has been enjoying the good life too much, and now they are a bit slower for it. But then again, I don't think this is going to be a massive problem. A Hersir fighting solo is usually a Hersir that's charging something, so you don't have to tap into that 4-2 movement all that often. And I think it's fair to say that Hersirs are usually expecting to start the game and spend most of the game joined to a unit, so their personal movement score does not actually matter all that much. At 3 wounds, the Hersir is not exactly frail, nor are they sturdy. Obviously, you would love to see a wound score of maybe 4 here, but I understand the wound score of 3, and I think it's actually the sweet spot for several reasons. Despite being tall and powerfully built, there seems to be a difference in the physique of the orcs and in the Varanks, with the latter being more dexterous, and the former being the quote-unquote more tanky stock. The Hersir also gets to use their wounds attribute as a crucial resource when it comes to them hitting and otherwise performing beyond their points value. So having a wounds value of 3, I think makes it so that they are not overly powerful for the points that you are getting, but as we are about to see, you do get a huge huge amount of utility for what you are actually paying. The Hersir actually has quite a good willpower score. The orange and the yellow does not actually depict his psychological performance accurately, since firstly, as we're about to see, the Hersir is elite, so the orange and the yellow willpower on an elite model is actually stronger than a double orange would be on a non-elite one. The Hersir also has access to the Berserker Rage ability that will allow him to take a wound in order to add success, or as we are about to see, 2 successes to a willpower roll if necessary. So it should be exceedingly rare for one to see Hersir fail a willpower check of any type, at least in a situation where the Northern Tribes player was not willing to have that happen. At Morale 2, Hersir has a decent enough ability to chain together a few activations during a round, or leverage their push modifiers, or suffer stress from other sources before they become incapacitated by the stress they are bearing. But morale value of 2 is really as high as we can expect from a 25-point non-named model. Sadly, only one Hersir is available per company. This is actually one of the few models that I might be willing to take several of if I had the chance, because the Hersir combines so well with several of the units that we have access to, and running one solo isn't the worst idea either in my mind. But hey, let's make use of the one that we have access to, as I do in most of my lists. The Hersir is obviously a character and a Varank. Varank becoming important in conjunction with some other units' abilities. For example, the Hersir will be able to make use of the Tattooist's Breathe in the Spirit of the Totem ability, but not many of the force multiplier effects that the Orcish side has access to. One of the reasons to redo this video is the fact that in the latest update, the Hersir actually exchanged their fearless keyword for elite, which is a downright upgrade in my mind every day of the week. Elite means that the Hersir will more consistently pass their willpower rolls, they will be getting more out of their defense roll, and their offensive roll, their attack roll becomes even more dangerous. So a win-win-win situation if I ever saw one. As befits their backstory, the Hersir is capable of joining a unit of Varank infantry, and if there is a War Alliance model present, that is Alborg or Alvard Icebear, then the Orcish infantry units are on the menu also. Hersir has access to the Berserker Rage keyword, which is extremely versatile and powerful a keyword. Berserker Rage allows the Hersir, and as we are about to see, any unit that they join, to after they have rolled a willpower roll, a attack roll, melee or ranged, or a defense roll, to suffer a wound, to add any single symbol of their choice for their roll in question. Granted, this ability cannot be triggered if suffering the wound would destroy the unit in question, so the Hersir has to be at 2 or more wounds for them to be able to leverage Berserker Rage. As we are about to see, actually the Hersir has access to a more powerful version of this ability in Tattoo of Sturkriege, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. As befits a 25-point non-named character who's usually going to be found fighting attached to a unit, Hersir is lacking in the conquest department. Then again, Hersir is the type of model that will take an objective at the tip of their blade and not via the majestic presence that they can manifest when it comes to this stuff, so no worries there really. Next, let's talk about the solo Hersir's only skill, that is the passive skill of Tattoo of Sturkriege. In the backstory of the northern tribes, Sturkriege is the god of war for the Varanks. And as those familiar with the subject matter know by now, Varanks tattoo their bodies with images that tell the story of the Varank in question, and many of these tattoos actually have mystical properties attached to them, and the Varank carrying the tattoos may be able to draw power from their tattoos when the situation calls for it. So as you can imagine, a Varank sporting the tattoo of the god of war on them is going to mean business when things get tough and bloody. How this ability actually works on the tabletop is pretty simple. Tattoo of Sturkriege is a improvement upon the Berserker Rage ability that the Hersir has, allowing them to gain 2 symbols of their choice added to their roll of willpower, attack or defense after triggering Berserker Rage. They still have to suffer the 1 wound though, and they will be unable to access this ability if they are left on 1 wound, because they cannot destroy themselves via taking a wound with Berserker Rage. I absolutely love this ability. This is so cool, turning the wounds attribute of the Hersir into a resource that then fuels the most powerful ability that they have access to. Feels extremely thematic and cool, and it allows you to at times as the Northern Tribes player to get more value out of your 25-point model than you could usually expect to do, but at the same time there is only so many times that the Hersir can call upon the power of Sturkriege to help them on the field, and after suffering 2 wounds, barring any healing from a tattooist for example, they will be calling for the God of War no more. The most obvious use for the Tattoo of Sturkriege is obviously on the attack. The Hersir attacks is about to inflict X successes worth of damage upon the enemy, and then the Hersir improves the result by taking a wound and adding 2 additional successes to the roll. As we are about to see, this means that pound for pound, point for point, Hersir is one of the most effective damage dealers in the entire faction when they are able to leverage the Tattoo of Sturkriege. If you are looking for more utility with your attack, you can obviously use one of these 2 symbols to trigger the disarmed inflicting hollow success switch and use the other for damage, for example. Do remember, however, that there is nothing stopping you actually from using Berserker Rage to add defensive symbols such as blocks to your roll. So the Hersir can also, both on the offensive and usually on the defensive, suffer a wound and actually produce 2 blocks to their result, getting essentially a 2-for-1 type of deal. What's furthermore, the wound inflicted upon the unit itself via Berserker Rage does not count towards the combat resolution when you are calculating who won or lost the combat. So this is also a way for our Hersir to cheat when it comes to seeing who gets assigned a point of stress at the end of the combat. All in all, a really cool and thematic and situationally powerful ability that I can't get enough of. Next, let's go forward and break down the melee attack of the Hersir. At face value, the basic melee attack of the Hersir does not seem all that powerful. They are rolling a single red dice, a single yellow dice, a single black dice, which is quite rare for a Northern Tribes unit, and they are also adding an automatic success to their roll. The basis of the damage output of the Hersir is going to be coming from successes, as is usually the case with most units in Warcrow. The dice roll presented to you there will average about 3 hits. I think spot on 3 hits these days with Elite, with the maximum of 4. And the Hersir has access to a push modifier that adds yet another automatic success to the roll. The rest of the Hersir's effective damage output comes from a double special switch that allows them to remove a block per 2 special spent from the enemy. With the yellow and the black dice being especially adept at providing special symbols, and both also having a single facing with 2 specials on them, the Hersir should usually be able to trigger the switch at least once. Obviously, against enemies that don't have any blocks on their final defense roll, this switch will do nothing, but I think it's safe to expect that under most circumstances there is going to be at least that one block to be removed, so I do tend to calculate this as a point of expected effective damage for my Hersir, which leads to a total of on average 4 and at maximum 5 successes worth of damage when not pushing for extra performance, and average 5 maximum 6 points of effective damage when pushing for that extra performance. This isn't bad for a 25-point model, but wait, there's more. If the Hersir is able to leverage the Tattoo of Sturkriege and they are just going for full damage, when rolling normally without pushing, this is going to raise the expected effective damage average to 6 at maximum to 7, and when pushing for extra performance and taking a point of stress, the Hersir will on average deal the whopping 7 points of damage and at maximum 8, and that's pretty crazy for a 25-point model if you ask me. Beyond the raw damage output that the Hersir has access to, the solo profile also has a hollow success switch that inflicts the disarmed state upon the enemy. With the moderate amount of attack dice that the Hersir is rolling, they only have about 31% chance of actually inflicting disarmed upon their enemy, but if you deem the disarmed state to be a high priority of yours, you can use one of the symbols from Tattoo of Sturkriege if or you are willing and able to make use of it, that is, to inflict the said state upon the enemy you're dueling at the time. Rather interestingly and rather befittingly when it comes to the backstory of the Hersir, they are also rolling a single black dice as a part of their attack roll, and this dice can not only supply specials for the double special block reducing switch, but there is also a 50-50 chance of this die providing the Hersir with a block symbol or a hollow block symbol that they can then subsequently turn into a block via their elite. When combined with the Tattoo of Sturkriege, an attacking Hersir that's willing to suffer a wound can block as many as 3 return attacks coming their way, so the Hersir can be quite problematic to land damage against in retaliation also. One last thing to note is that in the update 1.5, I think it was, disarmed got improved in that disarmed units can no longer push for extra performance when attacking, so that's also something to keep in mind when Hersir goes swinging with their weapon and there is the choice between additional damage and the disarmed state on the table. The defense breakdown of the Hersir mirrors their attack breakdown in some ways. It's a really interesting and good potential role that we have access to over here. Thanks to Elite, you can expect your Hersir on average to produce a bit less than 2 blocks per defense roll, and there is the chance for them to roll as many as 3. Remember that, as already previously stated on several occasions, if you have the ability and willingness to spend a wound on the Tattoo of Sturkriege, you can trade a wound for 2 blocks on the defensive also. The Hersir also has access to a defensive switch, this time triggering on a hollow special symbol that each of the blue dice have 2 faces of. That can also inflict the disarmed state upon the enemy. If the Varank captain chooses to push for extra performance, they will get a orange dice's worth of retaliatory damage, that is 75% chance of inflicting inflicting a single success against the enemy, and inflicting the disarmed state becomes automatic. Again, keep in mind that you can use the extremely versatile Tattoo of Sturkriege in combination with this orange dice to inflict up to 3 points of damage, success-based damage that is, against any enemy foolish enough to dance with the Varank leader. With all that time spent on the solo Hersir, let's next discuss the version that you will be playing with when you have your Varank captain join a unit of yours. As you can see from the lower half of the picture of the card that is presented here, it would seem that something wonky went off when I turned the picture into a PDF for the purposes of attaching it to the presentation, but oh well, we can still read what's going on, so let's not worry about it too much, shall we? As the Hersir is an officer type character, as is conveyed by the helmet icon under their image on the card, they will be adding an extra member to any unit that they join, raising the threshold of casualties that the unit needs to suffer before its combat performance is impaired. This is especially important for units like Skin Changers that only have 2 models, but it's also useful in units of 4 models like the Tundra Marauders or the Ice Archers. What's more, the Hersir can continue fighting on their own if their unit gets wiped out around them. But here any overflowing damage to the Hersir is extremely important, because usually it's enough that your officer survives at 1 wound and you can still leverage them quite well, at least once before they go down. But a Hersir that suffers 2 wounds when the last members of their unit gets wiped out is going to be a Hersir that is unable to leverage the Tattoo of Sturkriege, so there's that to keep in mind. The Hersir also adds a point of conquest to their unit, and this can result in, for example, scouting Snow Leopard tattooing Tundra Marauders with a conquest value of 2. The Hersir also grants the Berserker Rage ability to the unit that they have joined via their To Die killing passive, which is probably the most badass passive skill name in the entire game so far. Fight me on this one, I dare you. The more I play with Berserker Rage, the more I come to realize how incredibly versatile an ability that is. Berserker Rage can allow the unit that the Hersir has joined to trade in damage with enemies that they are fighting. It can allow them to mitigate some points from combat resolution by taking a wound to produce a extra block on their roll. This ability can be used to trigger defensive switches, and very importantly, it can be used to pass those pesky willpower tests that would inflict states upon you, force your unit to do things you don't want to, or some feats include very important psychological elements to them. For example, the feat track has your unit pass a willpower test on 2 successes in order to complete the next phase of the feat, and having access to an automatic success on a stick via Berserker Rage is rather amazing. Do remember also that there is no stipulation on Berserker Rage that this ability is only usable on melee attacks, so have your Ice Archers shoot their fingers bloody when they are berserking arrows into the enemy if a Hersir decides to lead a unit of these ranged combatants into the fray. Hersir is one of those characters who imposes their willpower upon the unit that they join rather than adding any dice to the roll in question. So this befits the leadership style of the Hersir, described in the backstory section. They are imposing their will and their presence upon the unit rather than helping their underlings come to their own and to flourish under their command, so to speak. So there are situations where attaching a Hersir to a unit will increase the unit's willpower. There will be times where this is not going to change their willpower at all, and there are theoretically even situations where the Hersir will actually reduce the willpower of a unit that they join. Then again, thanks to the to die killing ability, this isn't a big deal. The Hersir's unit can also always just suffer one wound in order to add an automatic success to their willpower rolls, which should usually see them pass any test that they are going to be called upon to make. The Hersir does add a point of morale to their unit, allowing for extra activations, taking extra stress from push modifiers, losing combats, etc. Do remember that at least as of the recording of this video in the update, I think it's 1.5.2 that we are at this point, a character attached to a unit that's full on stress that has already activated can still activate in order to leave the unit. So there are going to be situations where a fully stressed out activated unit will see the Hersir charge out of the unit in order to inflict some extra damage upon the enemy. The Hersir also grants the command skill not one step back to their unit. When a unit that the Hersir has joined fails a willpower test, they can simply pay a command token and pass the test instead. This means that as long as you have command tokens to access and you are willing to spend one on this ability, the unit joined by the Hersir will not flee from the enemy as long as there is a willpower check attached to said occurrence. Then again, I think this ability is somewhat overshadowed by Berserker Rage granted by to die killing. If and when you are called upon to make a or the decision arises that you need to decide whether you want to spend a command token or a wound on your unit in order to pass a willpower test, I 9 times out of 10 go for taking the wound and reserving the command token for a later use. But there might be situations where you prefer to spend that command token anyway, if for example you have failed a test by more than one and Berserker Rage can't save you in that situation. So a cool ability, an ability that can situationally effectively stop your opponent from trying to leverage certain tricks and abilities against you, because they know that even if you should be so unfortunate as to fail the test, you will simply spend that command token and foil their plans anyway. Situations that might see the Hersir foil their opponent's plans thanks to not one step back include such as intimidating 2, taunt the enemy on the bulwarks, and for example defiant leader on an opposing or contender. As seen here on the rather oddly formatted offensive bonus table, the Hersir adds an automatic success to any melee attack roll performed by the unit that they have joined. They also grant a single solid success push modifier to their unit, which means that when combined with the Berserker Rage ability, the Hersir can provide as many as 3 automatic successes to the unit that they are attached to before you even roll any dice effectively. In addition to this, the Hersir actually is one of those cool characters that provide their own switches to the unit that they are joining. So the unit joined by the Hersir gets a double special switch that reduces a block from the enemy, as well as a hollow success switch that inflicts the disarmed state upon the enemy in question. These are quite nice, if not downright powerful switches, and they are especially good when it comes to the opportunity cost in question when leveraged on a unit that lacks competing switches of their own for these symbols. So units like Tantra Marauders, skin changers, even ice archers are fair game for Hersir in this regard. One of the few weaknesses of the Hersir as a leader of a unit is the fact that the defensive performance upgrades that they bring are extremely lackluster. As you can see, the Hersir does not provide any automatic symbols, additional switches, or any other such bonuses to their unit, but the unit rather has to make do with what they've got. Maybe occasionally getting to save a wound or even a model thanks to a disarmed state that they have been able to inflict thanks to the Hersir. And then there are the defensive possibilities offered by Berserker Rage. These include, but are not necessarily limited to, you inflicting a wound on your opponent by suffering a wound via Berserker Rage, effectively trading wounds, or reducing the amount of damage that is calculated for the combat result EA who won by suffering a wound to add a block to your roll, or if you have access to a defensive switch ability that you are looking to leverage for one reason or another, you can also use Berserker Rage to provide you a single non-block, non-success symbol of your choice if that helps you trigger a powerful defensive switch ability. And with that, I think it's time to close this analysis with final thoughts on the Varank Hersir. I find the Hersir to be a powerful solo fighter for the points that you are paying them, especially when you can leverage the Tattoo of Sturkrike. And the Hersir has the ability to frustrate more powerful enemies by imposing the disarm state upon them and leveraging the said passive skill of Tattoo of the War God in order to inflict way more damage than should be possible for a mere 25-point non-named character. Then again, as befits a model of this role and this cost, the Hersir does at the end of the day lack the staying power to go consistently toe-to-toe with the most dangerous enemies out there, but there may be a situation where a Hersir hungry for glory strikes something way more valuable and way more tough and makes a makes a number on them, but falls subsequently to a return attack. When the Hersir has suffered 2 wounds, the Tattoo of Sturkrike effectively shuts down and they become way more manageable for your opponent. These Varank captains' joint abilities are pretty great, the defensive bonuses notwithstanding, since the Hersir offers not only powerful offensive bonuses, amazing psychological resiliency thanks to Berserker Rage and Not One Step Back, situational additional survivability, as already talked about when it came to the defensive benefits, and everything that a officer type character brings to the table. So all in all, I personally consider Hersir to be a really affordable force multiplier piece that makes your usually Varank infantry units way more powerful, and the Hersir is also one of those models that can detach in the heat of battle to fight solo, and you are still getting excellent value out of them. And as already stated, I have sometimes even spent the 25 points to include this model as a solo piece, not just because they are my favorite piece in the entire game, but because I felt that they were the best model for the force that I was constructing. Okay, with this, it's time to put my first entirely reshot video into the books. Safe travels everyone, hope to see you again soon.